buenas tardes y bienvenidos a otra edición más de Connected at Home. Aquí otro miércoles más, bien contento de estar todo con ustedes. Sofía, muy buenas tardes, ¿cómo te encuentras?
Así es, muy bien, Gino. Qué bueno.
Qué bueno que estamos aquí. Oye, Puerto Rico está on fire. Jay, wow. Ponme el fueguito aquí, por favor, Jay. Porque la cosa está bien caliente. Oye, este fin de semana...
Qué fuerte.
Nosotros, este blog es de, obviamente, tecnología, negocio y cosas positivas, pero este fin de semana le voy a dedicar 30 segundos al tema. Y obviamente las primarias fueron un desastre. Viéndolo desde el punto de vista, digamos, operacional y de negocio, pues eso es como que una compañía que corrió ahí sin cabeza o algo así, no sé qué pasó ahí.
La única responsabilidad en todo el año de la comisión es esto, llegar a este momento de primarias, de elecciones y hacerlo bien. Tienen un año entero para planificar eso.
Yo creo que vamos a estar hablando años y se escribirán libros y libros de esta situación. Yo obviamente no conozco nada del tema legal y todo eso, pero me imagino que escribirán cosas como casos para después hablarlos en la escuela de ley y toda esta cosa, porque ha sido una cosa muy increíble.
Definitivamente. Oye, pero desde un punto de vista de negocio fue un fracaso total. La sede tiene todo un año para planificar y es bastante sencillo. Sí. Son papeletas impresas, ¿no?
Y hablando de cosas que están on fire, la relación de Estados Unidos y China también está on fire. Ahora con la situación de TikTok y el firewall que van a poner entre Estados Unidos y China para que no haya intercambio de información, eso está súper interesante.
Eso también es algo sin precedentes. Estamos viviendo de verdad que unos momentos nunca antes visto en tantos sentidos de la palabra alrededor de todo el mundo.
Sí, la gran sorpresa para mí fue la posible compra de Microsoft de TikTok y Instagram, que respondió ahora, salió con el feature de Reels, que es bien parecido a TikTok, y obviamente vamos a ver dentro de 45 días que es posible la compra, cuántos usuarios pueden quedar en la plataforma ahora que Instagram sacó Reels, y como hizo en el pasado con el Stories que mató a Snapchat.
Que Snapchat,
puede ser que Reels mate a TikTok. No creo que lo mate, pero obviamente va a declinar su utilización.
Bueno, obviamente eso es lo que quieren lograr, así que ya veremos. Sí. Se abrieron las compuertas, como quien dice.
Oye, antes que traigamos a nuestro invitado, quiero hablar rapidito. Quiero que lo tocamos en el pasado, el vale educativo de fondos federales. Hay un vale para todas las personas o todos los estudiantes que se graduaron de cuarto año ahora en el 2020. Tienen un vale de $1,000 para servicio de internet y equipo electrónico, una laptop o una tablet. Nosotros, la compañía Aeronet está participando de esta iniciativa, así que todo aquel que de los jóvenes que quizás se han graduado de este año, que no sé si muchos nos están viendo, pero sus padres o sus familiares que vean esta información, vayan a clase2020.com y ahí pueden redimir su vale con Aeronet. Así que el mejor servicio de internet para Puerto Rico. Así que, Sofía, ¿tienes algo que añadir antes de traer a nuestro invitado?
Yo simplemente quería recordarle a nuestra audiencia que seguimos con las charlas y la serie de Tech Guru Talks. Tenemos otra charla el próximo miércoles con Lorena Mesa de GitHub hablando sobre Machine Learning y específicamente confiabilidad de datos. Así que es un tema bien relevante hoy en día, todo el mundo está pensando en eso.
Confiabilidad de datos, uf.
Sí, eso está trending, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Y lo vamos a ver la semana que viene en un contexto de Machine Learning, así que pueden entrar a techgurutalks.com, registrarse y los esperamos.
Awesome, perfecto. Pues vamos a traer a nuestro invitado. Obviamente, antes de traerlo, voy a dar el disclaimer, que es nuestro primer invitado en que vamos a hacer el blog en inglés. Así que si me ven a mí metiendo la pata o algo, let it slide, porque estoy fuera de práctica. Así que, oye, vamos a traerlo aquí, que tenemos a John Anderson de EventRay. John, how you doing?
Good afternoon. Hey, I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
And welcome. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for being here, accepting our invitation to be in this vlog. Pretty happy to have you here. I would like to know, in our audience, can you tell us a little bit about you, the company that you represent, what's all about? John and EventRay.
Yeah, so Yeah, I'm John. I'm a software developer. Before living in Puerto Rico, I used to live out in Silicon Valley, in Palo Alto, and San Francisco. And so me and my co-founder of EventRay, we were working at a company called SurveyMonkey. It's a survey platform for and so we worked on the
Everybody
data.
knows SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, a lot of people know SurveyMonkey, and so it's kind of nice that I've worked at a place that people know of because it's a nice conversation starter.
Right.
Sure.
But like before SurveyMonkey, Joe and I both worked together at another company that was doing online registration for events, and we were building custom software for events. So we were working with 10,000, 15,000 person events that had very complex needs, and we would just write custom software for them. Okay. And so after working at SurveyMonkey, we're like, we could bring basically SurveyMonkey to the event industry. They're like, we need something that's as easy to use as SurveyMonkey, but that can handle those complex needs that event organizers need, because no two events are the same. They're all very different. And so it's not easy to just build a single platform that can handle a lot of different events. And so we left San Francisco in 2017 to start EventRay together. And so my wife she really loves Spanish. She studied abroad in Mexico, in Monterrey, Mexico. And she was like, we need to raise our kids bilingual. They're just now starting now. And, when they graduate high school in 18 years or whatever, Spanish is going to be one of the primary languages, especially in the United States, but in the world. And so, we moved to Southern Florida at first, but the schools there were very difficult to get into the Spanish programs because not many of them have Spanish programs because they have the opposite problem. They have a lot of Spanish speakers that need to learn English. And so they're really good at teaching Spanish speakers English, but not very good teaching English speakers Spanish. And so we're like, well, if we take them to Puerto Rico, they'll definitely speak Spanish. So and since I was running EventRay, we are already operating remotely. So I was just like, let's go to Puerto Rico. I'll operate the company remotely, and we'll just we'll raise bilingual kids. Wow. And so in 2018, we moved down there. My wife visited once before Maria in 2017, and that's when we made the decision we'd move. And then we moved the next year. We had to let the dust settle a little before we came.
I have so many questions. Moving from San Francisco to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Wows, we can maybe be talking here hours. But and how about EventRay? So tell us a little bit more. What's your target market? What's the app or the application or the software does? How do you sell it? Is it a software as a service or something like that?
Yeah, so we're a software as a service platform where the event organizer can build out their event website, their mobile app for the on-site experience for the attendee, and then the registration form. And so the big differentiator for us is we allow them to define all the rules that are necessary for their event. They may have students that get discounted prices. They may have speakers where they need to ask additional questions. And so they can define all the different rules and actions that need to take place for that event so that they can collect all the information necessary for all their different categories of attendees. And so we mostly work with larger events because when you're running a simple ticketed event, you don't have a lot of different categories. You don't have a lot of different prices. So our selling point is really the complexity of those larger events. And then we handle the whole on-site experience. So we have self-checking kiosks through tablets. So that they just walk up, scan a QR code, it prints their badges, any tickets that they have, and then it directs them onto the next stage. And so we have
platform. You do a lot more than just a simple Eventbrite to register.
Exactly. It's the full event management experience, and that includes managing the attendees, designing all the badges, the tickets, the reporting and data analysis is a really big part of what we do because when you're working in a large event, like if you're doing 2,500 attendees, you have a large space at the convention center as well. So you may have 15, 20 rooms, you'll have an exhibit hall, and there's fire codes. So when you're running analysis, you need to know what talks are the most popular, which one's going to the big rooms, which one going to the smaller rooms. You need to track what exhibitors have hot booths versus cold booths. So if you have an exhibit hall and you have an exhibitor that's not getting any attendees to walk by, you need to track that and figure out, is it because they're not there, or are they in that space? Do we not have enough signage that attendees aren't walking past there? And so our software sells to meeting planners and conference organizers, but our product's goal is to make a better experience for the attendees. So everything we build is to make sure they don't have to fill out any more information on the registration site than they need to, that they're directed in the right place once they get on site. They have their own personalized schedule, so they know when talks are happening and when they need to go. And yeah, so we're doing anything that we can to help an attendee have a better experience. But most of that was for physical events and having a great experience with physical events. Right. So things are changing a little with COVID.
Talk to us about that, right? Because obviously large gatherings now are basically legal in most, well, here, but also in most states and countries around the world that have spikes in COVID cases. So what have you guys been doing? How have you redesigned or pivoted your business?
Yeah. So, and what's crazy is we actually started experiencing COVID in January because we had an event that was scheduled to operate in Singapore. And so the breakout had already happened out there.
Yep.
And so we started in January. And so we were like watching it and we're like, hopefully this is an isolated case, like no one expected it to become what it was. But yeah, we had our first cancellation and they just completely canceled. But once it reached the US, we had people just either cancel or try to run virtual. And so right in March, when it all started happening, we had to pivot our whole roadmap. We had to change everything because our roadmap was make onsite better. We were going to do facial recognition, so check-in would be much quicker to shorten the lines on the space. We were going to do Bluetooth beacons so that we could track movement around this physical space. Just everything that just doesn't exist now. And so we switched, and the first thing we had to do, which was kind of sad, is build in mass cancellation tools, mass refund tools. We wanted to get people their money back as soon as possible. We didn't want to. And we didn't want our customers to have to go in and refund 7,000 individual tickets.
Wow.
And so we had to do a lot of automated processes around mass cancellations and refunds. But then once we got through that hurdle of everything canceling, nothing happening, and everyone realizing, we need to continue operating. COVID's not going away. We still need to run events. People still want to network. They still want to socialize. And so we pivoted to building a social platform, our virtual platform, where now you can have the speakers log in virtually, share their screen. We built out a whole social lobby with little pictures of tables, so attendees can go sit down at a table and basically network and socialize. And then it's basically the same piece of software, but also the exhibit hall. So instead of a picture of a little table, you have a picture of the sponsor or exhibitor, and then you can sit down and communicate with that exhibitor and talk with them and get to know their product. Because when we first started, before we built our virtual platform, we ran some virtual events and we used all the existing pieces of software that existed. That was, our first one was 2,500 attendees and it was in Zoom. And it worked well. I think all the attendees loved it. But Zoom is not a great platform for 2,500 attendees. Especially, it's not a great platform for video production or producing a virtual event. And so, and so we had a lot of complaints about, they're like, we're glad that we are still able to attend, but we don't believe we got our money's worth. We paid the price for a face-to-face event, not a virtual event. The virtual event wasn't as good as a face-to-face event. We didn't get to meet anyone. We didn't get to talk to the sponsors. And so, we kept hearing that feedback. And so we started trying to do more. And so we started doing things like Zoom has breakout rooms. So the next Zoom meeting we had, we started creating breakout rooms and just sliding people together randomly, being like, all right, you 4 people, you get to go talk to each other. It's happy hour. Enjoy. Hopefully you like them because you're not coming back for 10 minutes. And so, it was a fun experience, but I feel like everything was an experiment for the first few months. But we realized we really needed to create an alternative to physical spaces, but that gives that same social networking experience. So
I've been to a couple of virtual events, and let me tell you, I enjoy the easiness of being at the conference and the presentations, but I find it kind of awkward to try to socialize with other strangers. It's more difficult virtually. So what are your thoughts around that?
It 100%, and I don't know. We've been discussing it. We've been trying to figure out ways to solve it, but it is weird. It is more comfortable to walk up to a random stranger physically than to just have them appear on your screen. It just doesn't feel comfortable. And I think some of that's because you're in your home. You don't, maybe it's not as comfortable of a space to be video conferencing with a stranger in your home, because now you have a stranger in your home for the first time. Like, at least for me, I have 2 kids who are now remote learning or homeschooling, and so I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old running around. You never know when they're going to pop up and start talking.
Yeah, usually on physical events, you can see the physical cues if the person is open and approachable.
Yeah.
But virtually, it's non-existent. So it's either you ram into someone like, "Hey, I'm here," or not. So it's kind of, I think maybe some sort of I've been thinking about this. Maybe some sort of a forum-based. I'm thinking of the old days of Usenet and IRC, stuff like that. Something like that.
Yeah.
That it's a little bit more inviting, and maybe not use the video camera. Just start with some sort of group chat, and then move on to the camera if you want to or not. So just
exactly. Like, I think, some type of text-based experience would be better for a lot of people because it'll make them more comfortable. But even with the video, I think one of the big complications we see is, there's usually a few social butterflies in any one room, and they're usually the ones starting the little group. Like, maybe they'll start a one-on-one conversation, but then you'll get the flies on the wall, the people that just walk up and they circle around the social butterfly, and they're not really ready to join the conversation yet, but they want to listen. They want to be part of it. And I think those types of groups naturally form. But in this virtual world, you don't have a way for the social people to start those conversations, and then the ones that are a little shyer to like observe for a little bit and like stand in the back of the group and listen until they hear something that they could put feedback in. Right. And so we would like to try to even provide something like that where you could like spectate a conversation until you're ready to join it. But then that feels weird because you're like basically spied on, like you have people
dropping or something.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's a good solution that will be comfortable for everyone, because in physical events, you can choose the experience you want. You can join the big group or you can just stay in a small group, and there's the food and drinks that kind of open up things a little bit, whereas in virtual, you don't have that either.
It's certainly challenging. We've been doing all of our events virtually, of course, as well. And we've tried different platforms, Zoom included. Lately, we've been using Hopin, which is nicer, and it sounds like very close to what you're describing. But it's still kind of not unnatural, right? You can enter a networking room and then you sort of get paired randomly with another person that decided to network as well. But then, video turns on and, you're in your living room and great, right? But it's definitely a different experience. So the question I have for you, I guess, is do you integrate with other virtual platforms out there? How does that work? If a client of yours is using a different platform or has a preference for Zoom or for something else, do you integrate? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so we allow our customers to use whatever they want. And so our policy is if you need a piece of software, we'll develop the integration. We have a full open API, so anyone can integrate with us as well. But if you are a meeting planner or conference organizer and you're our customer and you want to use vFairs, Hopin, Feedloop, GoToMeeting, Zoom, any of those, we've built in automated integrations. And so we just allow you to push a button that says enable Zoom or enable GoToMeeting, and we just, every time a new attendee comes in and registers, we push it over to that platform. That way that attendee can log in right away, join any of the virtual sessions. And that was like one of our major pushes early on, especially before we built our platform, was that we just had to provide something for our customers. They're like, we're going virtual. How do we go virtual? And so, Hopin wasn't even released at the start of this.
Right,
They're a new platform. They didn't exist at the beginning. Yeah, and so we were pushed into whatever we could, and so I forget some of the early ones that we pushed to, but it's basically, you know, the GoToMeetings and stuff. And a lot of them, like the Zooms and the GoToMeetings, Zoom didn't even have real security at the beginning of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like we're charging $2,000 to an attend event, but if you have the link, you can just walk in and go for free. And so it was a learning experience. So we're like, all right, we need to figure out how to lock these down. Like we can't just have random strangers walking off of the street and attending these events that people are paying for. And so, yeah, that's why like the virtual events like Hopin and Feedloop have been really good. And our customers, you know, I think most meeting organizers, they have different levels of events. You know, they may run a 3,000 person event and then a 100-person event. So maybe Hopin works for the 100-person event, but doesn't work for the 3,000 one. And so like, we can't just pick our favorite either. We can't just say, all right, Hopin's the virtual platform, use it. You know, we have to integrate with everybody. And a lot of the times, so one of the ones that we integrate with is our largest competitor. It's the company that we want to take down. They're the big gorilla. And we're like, we're coming for you, Steve. We're going to take you down. And then virtual happens, and they had a virtual offering through their mobile app called Crowd Compass. And so like, you know, they're our biggest enemy. And we're like, give us API keys. Data over there.
That's funny. What's your take on obviously what's happening now? Do you think it's going to have a long-term effect on events down the road, 2, 3, 5 years? People are going to get maybe accustomed to virtual events, or do they want to go back to having physical events?
I think everyone's going to be different. And I think we're going to be facing this for 3 or 4 years minimum, because even if we resume physical events next year, there's going to be a lot of attendees who are uncomfortable. And you see that even in your day-to-day life, right? I have friends who rip off their mask as soon as they can. But then I have other people who like, they get close to someone and they put the mask on right away, right? And so the comfort level of each person is much different. And for events, events are international, a wide variety of people. And so you're going to have people who, like, we have it now. We have people that email us when they register and they're like, I can't believe you're going virtual. Like, if you let me come, I will come. I'm like, all right, well, hold up. We're not there yet. Like, physical is going to take a while. But, you know, so once we do start doing physical again, we're going to have the same thing, because if you have 2,000 people going into a room, you're still going to want to have some social distance. There's going to be a lot of people that aren't comfortable with strangers that haven't had tests in a while. And so I think it's going to be hybrid at first, and probably for a long time, where the people who are comfortable going to a physical event, they will have the opportunity to. There will be restrictions. They will have to wash their hands. They will have to wear masks. We're probably going to have contactless. So like with our self-checking kiosk, you know, that's right now you scan a QR code that you're holding on your phone. So it's contactless already, but I think we want to get that even better, of like the facial recognition or something, so they can just walk in, get a scan and print it. They don't have to touch anything. We're not wiping down the on-site computers after every attendee or anything like that. But I think it's going to be years before we resume to anything that's close to what we had been previously, just because you don't want your attendance to drop, right? So if you were running a large 2,000 person event and you're saying, I'm only going physical, you're probably going to be down to 200 to 300 people. There's going to be a lot of people that are not comfortable coming to a physical event. And so you're going to have to make a hybrid, and that's going to be the next thing we have to solve. How do you make a good experience when like a third of your people are physical and half of the 2/3 are virtual? Like, how do you get them so they can talk to each other or network? Or is it basically 2 events? Are the virtual people going to talk to the virtual people, and the physical people are going to talk to the So we haven't solved that yet.
I haven't thought about that one, but yeah, that's pretty interesting. Look out. Yeah. Now that we're talking about the future, where do you see you and your company in the next 5 years?
It's wild. Like I would say in March when it first happened, I didn't see the end of the year. You know, like it was scary. But luckily, I think, you know, there's clearly winners and losers in COVID right now. You know, you see like Home Depot, Walmart, their stock's skyrocketing. They're doing really well because they had things, or Amazon, they had things that we needed during COVID. And we were almost one of the losers of COVID, but now with virtual, like it opened up a whole new market. You know, that was a market we weren't looking at. We weren't planning virtual events. We weren't even in that space, but people did run virtual events before. They were running webinars before COVID.
Right.
So there was stuff happening. It just wasn't our focus. So now we did get like a whole new opportunity, and we're getting a whole new set of business. When we were doing physical events, our contracts were like 2 years, and there were a lot of negotiations. We had to fill out RFPs because we're going after these large events, you know, so they want to sign contracts. They want to know we'll be around for at least 2 years, and we're going to guarantee uptime. And so it was a lot of work. And so when we went for even larger organizations, they were requesting stuff that we couldn't do as a smaller startup. So like if you've ever heard of SOC 2, security, and that's a $20,000 certification, and we can't pay be negative $20,000 for the opportunity to request your business.
Yeah.
Like if you want to pay for the SOC 2, sure, we'll take the SOC 2. But now those customers are willing to talk to us because they don't have a choice. They're looking for a virtual platform. There's only so many out there.
Right.
And so we're getting a lot of new doors opening that we just didn't have before. And so it's pretty exciting. It's really hard to see the future at this point because 6 months ago, our future was completely different, and it seems to be continuing to change. And so it's I'm excited though. Like I think it's going to be a fun few years as the industry moves around, and not just us, because we had a lot of really old, slow moving competitors, like just old school guys that have been around for 20 years. And I think they're going to be the biggest losers in this because they just don't have the development mentality to change quickly, adapt.
Right.
Yeah, they're the ones that plan for 6 months before they write anything. And so I think all of us younger, smaller startups have had the opportunity to disrupt some of these larger organizations that we probably never would have had to, or it would have been years before we reached that point.
Awesome. Well, here's a lighter question for you. What content are you consuming now? Podcasts, reading?
It's a lot. So clearly, I'm speaking English right now, even though this is normally a English podcast. But we do have a Spanish podcast. But we have a rule in our house that media that gets consumed has to be in Spanish because that's the reason we moved to Puerto Rico. Like there's no reason to move to Puerto Rico and then just keep doing English stuff. And so if we're watching Netflix, it's all Spanish content. So we started off, this is probably a little off topic. But,
Spanish. Congrats.
Yeah. So, but Spanish is way different. So like if you watch something like Casa de Papel, for example, I turned it on one day, literally had no idea what they were saying. They speak so fast. I just wasn't picking it up. And so what I realized is I needed to find some media or content that I could consume that was slower. And, like podcasts and stuff like that, where they speak a little slower are better. Or like even, the politics of Puerto Rico are always a fun thing to watch and listen to. And so I get to watch a lot of news, and I can pick up a lot more of that. But one of the fun things that I did was I wrote a script to download. Netflix is really good about having Spanish content. Like there's not a lot of Spanish media out there, but Netflix produces a lot. And they have subtitles built for all of it. And so what I did is I found every native Spanish-speaking show on Netflix, and then I wrote a script to download all of their subtitles, and then I did data analysis on it where I tracked how much time each word took. And so I rated the Spanish movies based on how fast they spoke so that we could start with slower movies and then get up to like Casa de Papel.
That is amazing.
Developers.
Yeah, so I have my priority list of content that I'm consuming based on the speed that they speak Spanish.
Well, I'm going to give you a hint. Watch telenovelas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are definitely.
I heard a lot of people learn English, Spanish, I'm sorry, by just watching the novelas. So.
Yeah. What is that one? The hotel one. I forget what it's called.
There are too many.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about. I've seen it.
Like that was one of the first ones I worked through. It was about a hotel, but I forget what the name of it was. But they have a Mexican version and a Spain version, and so you can actually like watch the same storyline in two different dialects.
Right.
So it's kind of fun.
Cool. Well, Don, I think we're at the end of our show. We always end with a question asking our guests to really talk to our audience. And if you had a piece of advice to give our audience, mostly entrepreneurs, but also regular people with jobs right now, what would you say and why?
I think the big thing is adjusting to remote work. Like, luckily, my company was mostly remote before COVID hit. We had just opened up an office in San Juan above Libros Ace in March of 2019. So we didn't even have our office opened a year, and we shut it down already again. We're like, all right, we're going back to virtual. But I think I see a lot of companies not operating virtually properly. They expect people to be at their computers 100% of the time, and so if they see the Slack online thing go off, or if they don't respond within a certain amount of time, or they even try to have too many video calls. I see a lot of ones where they're like, all right, every time I need to talk to you, I'm gonna call you on video rather than just messaging them in text. And they have to realize remote is different. A lot of us have kids at home. We have different schedules. You didn't track people when they were in the office. If they went out for coffee, they went out for coffee. If they went out for lunch, they didn't ask you for permission to go out to lunch. They had free movement. You have to treat people like an adult, assume that they're working, and let their work speak for itself. Don't try to micromanage just because you can't physically see someone. And I've experienced it all the ways. Like I was the first remote worker for one company, and I was the only remote worker. And that was painful because I would miss a lot of conversations. They would have a hallway conversation and then assume I knew because everyone else knew. And then they would think it's weird that I didn't know that something was happening that they never told me. And so I think communication needs to be very clear. You try to have as much discussions and conversations in like group channels if you're using Slack or Discord or anything like that. Keep as much communication open so people are getting all that information, because when you're in a physical space, you know that who was in the room. You remember, in that meeting we had those 5 people, so we need to tell this other person about it. But when it's virtual, and some people were there virtually, but not everyone was, like maybe someone was going out grocery shopping so they couldn't attend the meeting. So it's very like send follow-up emails, communicate heavily. Like if I'm going out to get lunch or anything, I send a message. Hey, I'm going out. I just communicate everything. Like even if I'm walking my dogs, hey, I'm taking my dog for a walk. I'll be back. Yeah, and I just let everyone know I'm not at my computer. I am at my computer, and and especially right now, like one of our programmers, their school is actually reopening virtual, or they're reopening virtual learning and physical. So they're allowing it to be hybrid and get to opt in. He's opting to not take his kids into the physical one because they have grandmas and they don't want to expose grandmas. They want them to be able to hang out with their grandmas whenever they want. And so we know, and his wife's a nurse, so like she's more important than he is right now. And so he's going to be the one doing the homeschooling. And so we know that traditional hours are not going to be working for him, because from like 9 to 5, he'll be homeschooling his children or helping them with their homework. So like even that, like people need to get used to. You can't expect someone to be productive from 9 to 5 if they have a couple of children with them. And if they if they're young children, they need help with their homework. They can't just have their teacher tell them what to do and then they're off to the races, And so that I would just say, like, get used to it and be nicer about it.
Awesome advice, John. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, this has been a spectacular show. Great information. Well, wish you the best of your success with your company and what's going on right now and in the future. And again, thank you very much. Sophia, any last words or announcements before we go?
Well, I think that your experience has been great. Thank you for sharing. It's definitely an example of a company that most people, you're in the event space, the physical event space, so most people would assume that it's very difficult to come back from that in the current situation that we're in. But you've proven that it is possible. You can pivot. Everyone can do it, right? So I think it's a very strong message. And I really liked what you just mentioned, that piece of advice, especially for entrepreneurs and founders, right? To have that level of empathy and understanding. Everyone has a different home situation. And it's already proven that people that work remote are working longer hours than even when they were in physical space, right? So respecting those boundaries and really being empathetic about it is something that will go a long way. And we don't know the end of this, right? So it's here for a while and for the foreseeable future, and we have to adapt to those new communication styles and methods.
Yeah, especially with like, for at least with us, you know, we had people all over the place. I live up in the mountains of Luquillo. We don't have a traditional internet. One of my programmers is in Arecibo, and he doesn't have traditional internet either. You know, and so when we first went remote, yeah, well, yeah, and so that's like, I think one of the unique things about Puerto Rico, because like, you wouldn't expect it, but we have some of the best internet infrastructure out of anywhere.
Yeah.
I've tried to get fiber internet for over a decade. I've lived in San Francisco. I lived in Salt Lake City. I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Fort Lauderdale, everywhere. Like, if there's a big city in the US, I've probably lived there. And I've never been able to get fiber because it's always limited delivery. It's very rare that you can get it. But in San Juan, you have Aeronet, you have optical fiber, so you can get internet, fiber internet, like gigabit internet, pretty much in the whole city center. And then once you leave it, like if you leave it like I have one neighbor and he's much further away than you'd expect. I live in the middle of nowhere on 2 acres. And we don't even have city water that comes up there. So clearly, normal internet's not going to be up there. And I have 30 meg internet. And I'm able to run this company remotely because of that, because we have microwave providers. So, you know, they put up antennas on the fiber lines, and then they give you internet from anywhere. And so you can pretty much have high-speed internet anywhere on this island. And that's amazing. But, you know, like, not everyone has high-speed internet at home because they weren't using the internet when they went home.
Right.
So, you know, we had to get like AT&T hotspots for some of our people because they didn't have, they weren't planning on working at home all the time, especially not video conferencing, you know? And so we, you know, like, I think that's another thing that employers should look at is if your employee doesn't have good internet, and I've experienced that with schools too. My kid, I had one kid that went to the public schools and one that went to Socorro, private school. And some of those teachers just did not have good internet at home. They would be trying to teach, and it's just chop, 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 and like, you can't get anything. And so I think that might be something that people have to think about. Like, and we should, as a country, think about on the education side of, do we need to get teachers AT&T hotspots or microwave line antennas put on the roof? We need to get everyone connected because this is not going away, and so everyone needs to get connected to have a reasonably.
That's part of our job. Getting people connected. Well, John, thank you very much. Again, thank you for being here. Great information, and I wish you the best of luck and success with your company. And up to next week, we're going to see you again. This has been Connected at Home, the vlog for information, business, and everything else. Sophia, thank you very much for being here again. And see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.